there, mate?
Hey, mate.
Yeah. Um,
Thank you.
yeah, good job. Eye awareness is really an empty centre and care and having no internal dialogue. So it's sort of a state of cultivatedness. Somebody comes to have this more and they chip away at their own inner dialogue. How relaxed someone's tummy is and how relaxed someone's feeling evermore, and what social activities existed evermore, which is enjoyable. It engages feelings of accomplishment, acknowledgement, achievement, learning, and growing. These things are an internal generator and are about behaviour which is motivational. And having achieved ever more silence, internal dialogue more, there's a great sense of more stoicness where somebody's really looking at ever more what's the ethical condition that arises as a result of a response that you can have. And blood type can cause someone to be more having 4 colours in their eyes versus only 3. So tetragenic is more 4 types of cone cells, where the averages have only 3 cone cells. The average eye individually could see down to around 350 nanometer in a blue range, and up to around about 800 nanometer in the red range. But someone where if someone has a little suicide or some things just like that, they could suddenly see all the way down to 150 nanometer range and all the way up to 1,200 nanometer range sort of thing. So it's just an absolute increasedness of sudden awareness ever more of colour and things which the eyes could have. Our eyes don't really see colour the same, in other words, and blue light and white light sort of intensifies dopamine. So dopamine is sort of connected to the things that people see and this sort of thing. Part of a reason why you could see blue, white light a lot and blacked out windows where casinos are and things, in a lot of betting and this sort of things. Colour and that sort of thing is really being played upon a lot and excessive. And so red light, of course, and with a small amount of turquoise, which are our colours is like red, white, and yellow, and red and black, with a bit of turquoise in there, sort of as a southwestern colours sort of thing. But red sufficiently sort of assists to help stimulate dopamine ever more, and gives a sense of intensity to matter relative. And so red, orange, and yellow are colours that do such, versus black and white. And so some colours could cause you to feel a bit more cosy sort of thing. Small amount of turquoise in there can cause a bit of a balanced sense of a feeling coziness relative, and how colour is used. Serotonin and dopamine all are related, of course, and blue light and white light excess destroys all the dopamine more. And so vitamin L, life hydrate, and vitamin A and B and D and E and C, these things all in a whole food vitamin mineral complex really assist evermore. You and I have exceptional brain function. And so where somebody uses more radiant wet sauna and they can dispel toxin and replace enzymatic nutrient more instead, you're really learning how to self-medicate, and dopaminergic sort of amacrine cells that produce more dopamine, where you set up an environment where you can actually go through sort of cleansing and this sort of thing. But self-medicatedness is ever more because you've got access to your septum pellictum, which is your alliesthetic sense of feeling bliss where you are. And longevity really, it's felt more the finest is the longevity ever more, where somebody is more in perfect detachment, because this way you can achieve ever more bliss naturally which exudes from you. And it's a kinesthetic, auditory, visual, sort of driven, preferred, sensational, syntactual sort of functioning. And you're getting a dramatic more improvement where all ailments sort of start to disappear more, and a spontaneous creative intelligence evermore is inducted instead. And luciferin is a light-emitting sort of compound, which life colloidal luminescence is really beautifully, finely attuned evermore by molecules like guanine molecule and nanomagneton life colloidal that cause this to be, you see. So you've got red colours and muted colours like claret and nucleotide exchange factors, which guanine is an amino acid, and nuclear base wall is inside the retinal cell. And so fluorescence, and when you shine a light back, when a light comes back, when you shine a black light into the eyes, you can see like fluoresces back. And tyrosinase and phenylalanine and tryptophan are the very aromatic amino acid compounds which is needed, and those are things which is missing a lot because of heat processedness. And the red stimulates dopamine and melatonin and protects against myopic types of high ambient luminescence, which guards against myopia. It's a bit of a more perfected detachment that somebody really has. Otherwise, dopamine could have been hijacked. You see, excessive blue and white light wipes out what the normal balance is, where red should be. And amino acids like tyrosinase, phenylalanine, and tryptophan, which is in our formula, all are necessary to produce catecholamine, and phenylalanine is really engaged more in yours or my anticipatory sort of search patterns where dopamine is produced, and norepinephrine and epinephrine are all produced more there where the brain is. And direct current that supports red and blue really can assist heal up where damaged protein could have been where the eye is. And ubiquitin ligase life colloid is something which we select for in our whole food vitamin complexes we have. I mean, that is necessary for processing and having essential longevity for your DNA. And body cogs, are protein-like and signaling really give you a purpose. Otherwise, Alzheimer's with just like a teaspoon of castor oil here, there, totally can assist Alzheimer's just about overnight. Ubiquitin and lipase sort of enzymatic sort of clearing away of damaged protein goes on where the brain is, and misfolded amyloid and those sorts of things like tau protein all gets dissolved because of pancreatic enzymes. When somebody does sort of the liver flushing and those sorts of things, you really are having a best effect. But otherwise, the eye has horizontal cells within it which condense energy from light, and from light you get a direct current. And just to give you an idea of what's going on at life colloid level inside the cell. And so together, like for instance in the eye, you've got all the rods and they all get summed up in the cone resolution and all require superposition to have their effect. And that's conducted on a JC quanta that's 10 zillion times faster than what light is. The corona transport lens sort of shape becomes modified and lenses become far more flexible, which, like if you put cold shock like ice on your wrist 10 minutes before bed on your wrists, that cold shock protein really assists cause the eye to be able to get back its proper dimension whilst you sleep, and light transmits sort of a better intensity of via via 5 basic sort of types of nerves, and these are layered at the back and are really photomagnetized sort of pigment epithelial sort of rods and cone And each sort of disc is in a stack, and the cone sees colour, of course, and rods are sensitive to light. And so low light rods are far more active, of course, in your eye, and the rods get switched on and off via blue and white light. And the fovea really has the highest detail condition in the back of the eye there, and impacts bipolar cells, which convert the current. And the eye horizontal cells really enhance cell conductivity, and amicron cells carry out sort of an optic disc type of effect to exit where the blind spot is. But this goes on where the optic chiasm is, and it crosses over. The nerves do 80% to the other side of the brain and 20% to that same side. And you've got pupillary sort of rising reflex and these sorts of things. But basically, the eyes give us a visual window into the nerve tissue and how your pupil responds to light and how the pupil sets in the eye. I mean, the tissue of the eye can be read, and that's a phoenix physician learns how to read the eyes and read physiognomy of the body to be able to determine the things that's going on sort of more inside. But what's interesting really is the middle foreground, where you are in your visual scene in front, and you've got a feedback map which is for environmental feedback and ground and visual repeated sort of conception where the eyes are, where a resolution is. And you and I, we could, for instance, have a focalized memory, and that's sort of looking at something that's in the foreground, and sometimes not noticing anything in the background or not giving attention to that. And so, but that would be natural that you would give attention to the background. But it's interesting that the vast majority of people, after a short moment, could be tricked, and the things that they saw when their eyes was to be determined that the same picture was when it wasn't. It wasn't because the backgrounds were all very different. And people could have not noticed that, you see, because of our education. But 122 million sort of photoreceptors really capture light as energy and essential, and a DC current is generated as a result of that, which is really needed to be able to thrive and to detect between 400 and 700 nanometers wavelength. The pellicidum septum, which we've been talking about, becomes very bright. And we can see that where interest and pleasure is, this area quite becomes alive ever more. And a squid used, which is a super quantum interference device, can measure the amplitude, and you can see that through hemisphere synchronization, you've got a greater amplitude of energy in the body. And so micro and macro movements, which can be read out, and one could be learned how to do this. You could see all of those macro, micro movements show sort of a family of emotion that's behind any behavior, learning and memory, which in the back of the eye by images sort of show circular nerve tissue which conduct light, and eye movement tells us a lot about the brain, and we're all accessing cues which engaging body movement like eye movement and things can give you an indication of what nerve tissue is that's behind all of it. And so how that's being applied where you are, where your thinking is. But red, green and blue, these sorts of things are very much needed, and you need to have vitamin A and sunlight, and these sorts of things are so important to be able to have proper vitamin A. In the north, people could be not getting enough UV A, UV B. Those in the equator could be getting too much blue and white and bleaching everything out. And so a functional property really exists, and the psychographic space is used where you and I go to to access and store information on a timeline more around ourselves, whether we're aware of this or not. These are things that somebody could learn more about. And so you've got past, present, and futuristic sort of sensation, which engages a spontaneous creative intelligence, and how that's stored in studios of space, around the body. But light is converted to energy and through sound and then into mechanical energy. So light is conducted to expand really greatly, and it brings us all into a subsonic sort of vibration where north negative life water is really produced and exists, and at the back and the front of the eye, you've got H3O2 positive energy and H3O2 negative energy, and this is tapped, getting energy from the vacuum, and all is run off subsonic wave sound, which is converted radio frequency into mechanical energy, and this causes energy to be without any moving parts, of course, and no input needed. And so eye awareness really, which we're talking about here, where you've got superconduction existing evermore, and it happens ever because the eye is there with this empty space, and light where the eye comes to be. You've got a lenticular, meaning a circular type of energy pathway, which curves, and light comes in and doesn't come back out again. And it's intensified where it goes and it spreads out into ultraviolet more, but it's slowed down, and ultrasonic vibration comes to be as a result of the metalloid-like element and things that exists. And you've got the yellow in the retina and orange cells behind, and pink, and you've got light, which is conducted by the palladium, and radium and osmium and iridium and ruthenium and palladium, and these elements all act as a radiant energetic dynamo and collects all and reduces everything from radio frequency. So the rods and cones have, a 15-to-1 type of rhodopsin, vitamin A, and it's just really extreme in these cells. And rods can sense dull light and all the color, which really is dark, to tones of grey. And action potential goes from the red to blue range, and you've got a potential of a dynamic current going on that's produced, you see, from light and melanopsin, which is synthesized subsonic sort of vibration from radio frequency, which causes these molecules to spin and be acting as a moving generator. So from microsonic sort of vibration, what's useful as an energy is received in microamps, and this is harvested and amplified. And so you've really got light coming this way and a larger component of DC current in the body. The people could be cared a lot more about lenses that they use on their eyes, or where implants could be existing, such like that, which shouldn't be, but should allow proper UVA and UVB light through, which some of those materials don't do that. And so water can't be broken down from H3 negative, H3O2 negative to H3O2 positive, and a current doesn't exist like it should. And so piezo-magnetic direct current is where the nerves are, and ultrasonic wave and piezo-magnetic current is detected ever more. And so you've got various frequencies like 523 cycles, and you've got 2.9 meters per second sort of thing pressure, where fluctuation exists, and a JC quantum is conducting energy there. And so you've really got a structure that captures energy on demand, and it's augmented through the 0-point energy harvesting, and without any input, you see. And so these might be new concepts to people, but you've got cars which eventually be produced more from this radiant energetic dynamo idea, and molecules where somebody's feeling happy includes dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin, and endorphins and things, which reward molecules, also serotonin, and these are needed to kind of feel his ability to disconnect from one thing to, and have a fluidity and a connection that's felt. Oxytocin ever causes ever more this, and same with acetylcholine. And so our program really is a focus to get rid of heavy rock salt, which doesn't have any enzyme, and rock salt that's dead would have increased sodium absorption into the blood, and that then would have regulated potassium, which it does wrongfully. And low plasma sodium and high plasma potassium impact sort of the various zona glomerulus of the adrenal activity, and excess exciting ever causes ever more high blood pressure, and low potassium ever causes more extreme thirst and things like this. And so you've got a magno neutral condition of sodium chloride, which when it's transmutatable, it's enzymatically active, whereas from a rock it's not. And otherwise, then that rock salt ever could cause aldosterone excess and causing salt reabsorption more. And angiotensin 2, which is a substance, and renin, which is produced or cause stress, sort of an excessive breath, and low potassium levels, which cause kidneys to filter regulation not to really work as well. And so excreting what's excessive to balance the sodium, calcium, potassium, urea levels, you've got hyperaldosterone, which is existing and always on a heavy flesh diet and bean diet with rock salt. And so if somebody stops those things, it's really moving more onto live food, and you're not having the effect of a lot of rock salt all piled up and mixed with microplastic and things in the brush border of cells. And so you've really got cells which are very fine hair and plastic and bile and all of indigested protein and fat and excessive phosphate and methionine that forms into plaque inside the body of an infant, and babies which end up passing meconium in their stool after they're born, or they could have passed some of that meconium into the stool of the amniotic fluid. And it's a mixture of this lanuga sort of fine hair and plastic and bile and indigested protein and things just like that, and fat you find, and excessive phosphate and methionine, and it's dark and it's sticky sort of sticky sort of poop. You can imagine that, of course, that's not there where someone is being on more a life food diet. The largest neurotransmitter that we have in our body is dimethyltryptamine, DMT, which is released ever more where somebody gets close to death or something. And otherwise, it's a primary neurotransmitter which, during exceptional brain function, is ever more present, and the predominance of lambda and epsilon wave. Most didn't think that there might be waveforms that was down to around about 1 a second or lower than that, like 1 over 11 seconds, and naturally. But otherwise, lambda and epsilon wave could be more cultivated, and they both really have a very flat wave, which really energizes, and it's sort of more of like a reverse spin of a gamma level that it carries with it, and it allows ever more switched fast off and on, and the amplitude of energy really is raised ever more by the body. And so suddenly you can see that a minus 71 millivolt negative redox all of a sudden exists ever more because of a hemisynchronization that's happened between the hemispheres of the brain as a result of feeling interest and pleasure. So down there where the bottom is, you've got a neutralized field vector where a dynamic current which is felt on a JC quanta is the size of a particle of a Jubb, which is the smallest magneton size that's a conductive level of the vacuum. So life is really made up of a complex of energy which is conducted on this field, and superconduction, as we were talking about, is 10 zillionth times faster than light. And you've got the number 13 and number 26, and you've got a harmoniousness ever coming more from the thalamus of the brain, which, if it was only having 4 time or 4 beat, would only ever have 8 overtones and not have these ability to be able to pick out a rose, a pattern, or something like that in your brain, because you need like more 13 overtone at least to be able to produce things just like that. And so DMT naturally is endogenously produced by the pineal and excretes DMT and all substance naturally, sort of allowing anandamide and indole, sort of polypeptides and things which cause you to feel more elated. And these are things which you learn a lot about in neurology at university. But all induces sort of like ketamine and beta endorphin and serotonin and dopamine and racemine, acetylcholine, and these neurotransmitters all stimulated ever more through spice in food.
Nice. Yeah.
And also sort of the romance of somebody sort of feeling something which would come to be, which is pleasant, and looking forward to this. It's sort of more romance and lovingness where eye awareness is. And so whole brain functioning really is a release more of DMT, where cats sort of really could love catnip, for instance, and dogs really love grass and things, which has opiate in it and things. And so whole brain functioning really is increased connectivity across the brain, where most prominent areas where endogenous DMT is produced, you've got exceptional brain function in conditions where someone has more epsilon and lambda wave cultivation in Iowa state. And so nerve cells really exposed more to this versus stress, where adrenaline release would have been and limited mind function, and that kills a lot of the neuroplasticity that somebody would have to have ease of ability to be able to pick out the pattern in a stereogram that was given to you. And so you're really open to agreeable, more social connectedness and relaxedness ever more in having a really good stress response and likableness, you see. So lactucarium and muscimol and molecule are all sort of DMT-like sort of molecules, and you see dolphins ever passing puffer fish to each other, and you see wallabies doing sorts of things with psilocybin and stuff, and same with wombats, and eating various plants which have Mysteraceous sorts of species, which Virola oleifera and all these red sap bark like things, and nutmeg family like and Moringa oleifera and things are all plants and molecules which got DMT-like molecules. A molecule which really help people feel good, really like dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, and endorphin, really are reward molecules where you feel good because you're feeling more connected, and patterns in your thinking that cause you to feel connected, yes. And so otherwise there would be ease of ability to disconnect from something easy, could have a great functional fluidity and a connection. And so oxytocin and acetylcholine really assist with all of that. In our program, you really learn through these podcasts how heavy rock salt really, that's dead, increases sodium absorption into the blood and regulates potassium. And so then you have low plasma sodium,
or you have high plasma potassium, you see? And these things, like we just talked about just above, affect the zona glomerule also, and adrenal activity. And in excess, it excites ever more high blood pressure, and low potassium, where foodstuffs is cooked and dead and high in salt, it ever causes ever more extreme thirst, of course, and it stimulates also and inhibits the neutral sodium chloride channel. And these are things which is what cystic fibrosis is. And so there's a way for all of that to be healed, really, yeah. So you've got radio gigafrequencies, really, which is converted more to energy. And so you've got sonic vibration that stresses silica where structure is, like where the eyes are, which creates a piezo-magnetic dynamic current, and frequency-driven amps. And so frequency sort of from high-frequency amps on the basal membrane of the cells, you've got like a function of a metal oxide, which like MOSFETs are designed today, rapidly switch all in a circuit on and off, and an amperage then is available from that surge, but switching something on and off really fast. So, and this is what cars and energy all would run off in the future. And so this is sort of the end of petroleum and clean energy. So one could really create frequency-based amperage in closed loops where 50 hertz energy really is reused and it's a charge back, and a battery sort of frequency unlocks everything. And you've got high frequency MOSFETs today, which one could look into, that really create high leverage harnessed energy. And sodium-ion battery technology today, and sodium is abundant, not to be relied too much upon, or which is not as easy available, but abundant. Sodium vanadium phosphate is really used to maximize efficiency where those things are, and you've got a great north negative flow that's abundant, that's coming about, which we could come to see more on the market. But in nutrition, you've got vitamin D, B12, magnesium, and these things, which are really an involuntary loss of body flora that could be because excessive material is drank that has to be excreted, and muscle and nerve control all becomes more weakened, and the pelvic floor muscles all could have become weakened as well, and nerve loss always impacts urinary bladder and causing inflammation and urgency, whereas stress functional sort of overflow is existed in incontinence about that, and weakened muscle sort of condition, sort of an obstruction can be a factor where things are. But these are things that's really healed more on life food, and how important B7 and B9 is in this whole picture of everything. But you've really got a certain amount of energy which has to be for voltage to pass a cell life colloid, and for energy to be conducted, and you've got diodes and transformers there in a cell, and voltage induction, and coming down to microvolts, very minute, where the body is. You've got transformers where a small increase of primary current can increase dramatically, as a secondary effect. You've got a non-linear sort of dynamic current, not proportional really to the voltage that crosses it. And the physics of magneticity in neurology all really is via magneton charge and ferro and diamagnetic weakly repelling and paramagnetic wick, the drawing things together. You've got these forces. You've got celestial and terrestrial sorts of magneticity and permanent magnet and static B field and dynamic current in an A field and magneticity, but there is no such thing as electricity. Like something is flowing along a wire that was made and you get something from that. This is just old dinosaur. And you could see a lot of free energy devices coming and flooding the market more, and no input and energy coming out of them. So you've got temporary sort of magnetic sort of states of material, and you've got material which can magnetize and demagnetize, like various elements like cerium and cobalt, which that does together, and ceramic ferrite sort of magnetite structure. But in the field where nutrients are, you've got bugleweed and ashwagandha and bladderwrack and rosemary, I can think of, which is quite remarkable and can clear away, and assist muscle and clear up sort of dry skin and this sort of thing and depression. And you've got lemon water with chia seed in it and juice, and you've got where surgeries could have taken away thyroid, some tissue could have been left that couldn't grow more thyroid tissue, but otherwise the body takes up quite a bit the effect of that. But you've got a lot of herbs which also shown that alleviate where thyroidectomies could have been. You've got salvia, sort of milturasia and genocide, that's ginsengs, and schisandra, and all of these, white thistle, sage, chamomile, just an example I could think of, there's so many, fireberry. These are things like what's in the digest aid. That's a great formula to help with all this that we've been talking a bit about. Anyway, I think that we could or should go on at some point with a new show, Luke, and talk a bit more about radiant energetic dynamo. How do you get a JC quanta more from the vacuum inside our body? These are things that I think we should have coming up in the next time that we touch base and connect in with each other, eh, mate?
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah. So it's amazing. I guess it's an hour and a half, so that's like maybe 15 pages of work or something, mate, actually. Slowly read through it. It might take you one frame of what this is. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So love you, mate. So when we come back, I think we should maybe part one, part two. We've just done part two. We should do part three. We should talk a bit more about radiant energetic dynamo and how from no input, which is needed, you're getting a JC quanta from the vacuum, and how these red design more is really how the body functions. And, how does that function? We could get a picture of things a little bit. What we talk about is what we have coming up. But we've got also then what is whole brain functioning and what is non-recursive languaging, which is reminiscing, and it is a language without any, recursiveness, which whole brain function teaches people to be without any recursiveness, basically. But anyway, I think we've got some really great things that we have coming up in our talk as we go a little bit further into Jubb cell rejuvenation and how the life colloid is within all the cells, and the cell is not the original building block of the body, and if you gut the mind and you mind the gut, you're going to have a greater, longer life. Yeah.
Wow.
All right. Love you, mate.
Thank you so much.
Okay, mate. Okay, love you, mate.